Tigers nearly winning their third national championship in a 2013 BCS championship thriller to Jameis Winston and FSU. Auburn limped into the season at 23-16 over the previous 39 games, and then found themselves with 2 losses after a disappointing road loss to LSU in mid-October. But just 3 games later, the Tigers find themselves in what appears to be complete control of their own destiny for another shot at glory, with their old rivals standing in the way next week at Jordan-Hare. We'll discuss the Tigers' playoff possibilities as well as the players to keep an eye on for the 2018 NFL Draft as we go one-on-one with Brian Matthews, sports writer covering Auburn football for Rivals and Yahoo, on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's November the 15th, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we talk Auburn football with Brian Matthews. Brian, thanks for joining us today.
Greg, appreciate you having me. 10 days until a monster game at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what that really feels like to have that type of rivalry sensation. I wasn't born in a college atmosphere. I was born in a big city in right across the river from New York. So when you kind of grow up a Rutgers fan, it's kind of difficult to understand what that's like. I can only imagine. It's when 2 teams like that get together, especially when it means one of them could be playing for the national championship, whoever wins that game, that's just got to be the game of games.
It is, and it'll make Thanksgiving really, really interesting next week. A couple of days before kickoff, a lot of families getting together, and a lot of families mixed in the state, certainly, including my own. So, there's some business to take care of with ULM this weekend for Auburn, but most of the focus from the outside, at least, is on the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, and this is a situation, of course, where Alabama's won 7 of the last 9, including 3 straight. And anytime I see that, when I go over these college rivalry games, and I see that one team has beaten another in at least 3 straight years, the first thing that pops into my head is there are going to be some seniors on that team that know this is their last chance to beat them. So that really just ratchets it up everything, like if it needs to be ratcheted up anymore with everything else on the line.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, this team, and you could have said the same about Georgia last week. They had lost 3-6 Georgia. The Auburn program in history had never lost 4 straight to both schools in 4 consecutive seasons. So they took care of that last week, of course. But there's a lot of seniors, a lot of guys that grew up in the state that went to Auburn that played against these Alabama players in high school and in the last 3 years, and they're itching to get a win in this series.
Now, can you imagine a scenario? Are we looking at the Ohio State-Penn State scenario? Can you imagine a scenario where Auburn beats Alabama and then beats Georgia in the SEC championship game and does not make the playoffs? And Alabama
Probably
does.
Not.
And Alabama
Probably
does.
not, because you're looking at Auburn being 11-2 if that happens.
Yep.
Clemson or Miami is going to get a loss.
Yep.
11-1 in the ACC championship game. Wisconsin's got at least 2 tough games coming up. Michigan and probably Ohio State make the championship game. And of course, Auburn gets a chance to knock off Alabama, number 1 right now, in 10 more days. So if that scenario happens, I would think that if Auburn runs the table, they're at the very least number 3. I mean, I think if the committee looked at it between, at 11-2 Auburn and 11-1 Alabama, they'd probably look at that head-to-head a week earlier, that win, and then probably look at the good wins Auburn's had against Georgia, Alabama, and some other top 25 teams.
Yeah, I think that's it, is being able to beat Georgia twice, Auburn. I was going over the scenario last week, and I even, as soon as the team lost to LSU, I came on the air and said, look, Auburn fans, I don't know if they realize this, maybe they still do, but season ain't over. Because even after that second loss, I think you guys probably did know in the back of your heads, hey, you know what? We still run the table here. We beat Alabama. We get to the SEC championship game. We win that. Are they gonna not put in an SEC champion into the 4-team playoff? I mean, that's really hard to think of, and it's actually here just 3 games later that those possibilities exist. Some of that has to do also with some other teams losing. namely Ohio State. But the door does open up, and this possibility also now, when you think about it and how hard it might be to beat Georgia twice, Alabama once, and then 2 playoff teams. Just thinking about that scenario in order what it takes to win a national championship this year for Auburn kind of seems daunting, but I guess the kind of season it's been, I mean, why not, right? Especially if the team plays anything like they played last week.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And you look at it, they're playing, of course, Alabama in 10 more days, a rematch with Georgia. And then if they make the playoffs, you're looking at a possible rematch against Clemson, possible rematch against Alabama, or a possible rematch against Oklahoma, who beat them pretty good in the Sugar Bowl last year.
Yeah, those are great games to even think about, and I'm sure those Auburn fans would just love that to happen. So what is it about this team? Because I look at it and I'm seeing the remedy for success is definitely run the football, be able to run the football, take the pressure off of Jarrett Stidham, so he doesn't have to win the game for you, and also play fantastic defense. And from what we saw against Georgia, I mean, is that? Can you see that as the beginning of a run, or was it just a game? And you know what? We got to temper our enthusiasm here.
I think you can kind of look at the beginning of a run or part of a run, because Auburn scored, I think it's 301 points in their 7 SEC games, which is a school record so far. One more to go there. But
okay,
you look at this team, really since LSU, they sort of put it together on offense. They're being more aggressive, throwing more in first down, mixing it up.
Okay.
I think they're one of just 2 teams in the country that has over 230 yards passing and rushing. And they're one of only, I think, 4 teams in the country that are top 20 in scoring offense and scoring defense. So very balanced. Defense has been really good all year, but I thought they stepped it up a level against Georgia, and then the offense has steadily gotten better each week.
Yeah, and what was it on the defense? Because I take a look at Ourlad's ranking in the most recent brochure that's out, and I do see several players up there as far as some top rankings. Nothing like Alabama's, but boy, that defense sure looked like it was better than Alabama's on Saturday. When I see the top 3 guys probably being Trey Williams, who's listed as the number 13 ranked senior inside linebacker right now, Stephen Roberts, ranked number 6 free safety senior, and senior Trey Matthews, number 9 strong safety. Are those the 3, besides, of course, what we've seen this season of Jeff Holland and his 9 sacks? Are those 3 players and the top prospects on this team right now? And where does Jeff Holland fit in?
Actually, I'd say Carlton Davis defensively, maybe the top prospect overall on that side of the field. Although I would say Jeff Holland has been the guy who stepped up the most. You know, he only had like 3 or 4 career sacks coming in the season, had been a backup for 2 years, and now he's, leading the SEC with 9 sacks and what is 13 or 14 tackles for loss, whatever that is. And he's had a terrific year. And he's the guy that people just love to watch play, because you can tell he loves the game of football, very passionate, has one of those nonstop motors that coaches just love. So, he may be a guy that he's just a junior, but may want to go ahead and make that move just because he's had that great season and you want to sort of strike when you're hot. So he may end up being the top guy, but I think Carlton Davis, the cornerback, who's got great size and length, has been a 3-year starter ever since he's a true freshman. And you mentioned Stephen Roberts. Trey Williams has been bothered by a shoulder injury. May have to have some off-season work done to that, but he's certainly going to be drafted somewhere eventually. And then, of course, Trey Matthews also.
All right, and then on offense, it looks like most of their top prospects are actually on the interior of the offensive line. Austin Golson, number 7 center. And then, of course, you also have Braden Smith, number 2 guard, and Darius James, number 16 guard. So how good is the interior of that offensive line? And I got to imagine it's pretty good the way they've been able to open holes for Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah, it's really good. Braden Smith is a special player in there. I think he's going to be a fairly high draft pick for a guard. Maybe even a early, top 2 or 3 guard taken. We'll see. But, they got 4 seniors starting on the offensive line. Casey Dunn, who transferred from Jacksonville State, has been terrific, especially the last month of the season, playing through an injury. And Austin Golson has started at 4 different positions on the offensive line: left and right tackle, left guard, and center. So he has a lot of versatility going forward.
What is his best position, do you think, at the next level?
Maybe center, if he can handle those big 350-pounders up there. If not, he's certainly athletic enough to play a guard. I'm not sure if he's got the length and the the ideal body type to be a tackle in the NFL, but I think one of those three inside positions he could play.
Now, I remember the beginning of the season when they lost the game to Clemson. One of the things that, and at the time, I don't remember. I don't really think that there was a whole lot of news about the status, the health status of Kerryon Johnson. And I remember watching the game, and I understand how what kind of a player Cameron Petway was last year, and he was the number one running back coming in this year. But I remember Johnson watching him last year, seeing the talent there, and not seeing him in that Clemson game. I kind of said, you know what, that to me that's a difference, because Clemson. Their defensive line was so disruptive, and Petway is more of a between the tackles power runner, but Johnson is got a little bit more speed, of course, and that was a dynamic that was missing. And of course now Johnson has become the number one running back with Petway out. He really is starting to take over. I mean, this kid is looking like a really big deal at running back. How good can he be?
I think he can be really good in college, and I think he can be a serviceable NFL running back in the future. He certainly has some skills. His ability to have vision and patience as a running back is something that's just innate, and he's really good at that. And he's also got a little bit of a mean streak. He's tough to tackle. Likes to use that stiff arm a lot. Has we call it a Euro step, almost like a basketball player.
Okay.
In the open field, that sort of fools some guys. Lets him get some extra yards too there, and get some yards after contact. But I don't think he's a Ronnie Brown or a Carnell Williams or one of those types coming out, but I think he can have a good career in the NFL at running back.
All right. Stidham. Now, Stidham had some part-time starting action against with Baylor back in 2015. I think he only had a little over 100 passing attempts. And a lot of people thought that he could be a big difference maker this year. We understand that he's a very consistent, high completion percentage kid. But early on in the season, with the pressure with Clemson and even LSU, there's just some wonders about whether or not he could be that difference maker for a top program trying to win a national championship. And all of a sudden, since that LSU game, things have really taken off. Last two games against A&M and Georgia, he's 36 of 54, 82, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. So has something changed as far as either in him, his confidence, or as you mentioned before, the scheme?
Yeah, I think a few things have changed. Number one, I think Gus has given a little bit more autonomy and a little bit more trust in offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey. He was brought in this year, the first year, brought in from Arizona State. So I think they're having a little bit more consistency on offense. I think the offensive line has grown up and gotten much better. That first game, you had Prince Tega starting his, second overall game against Clemson at left tackle, and they just sort of ate him up. And the other tackle, Darius James over there, is not really a tackle. He's a guard. Playing tackle. So Clemson's D-line really dominated that game from start to finish, and he didn't have much of a chance. But he's grown a little bit, making better reads, better decisions. The offensive line's got better, and just the offensive play calling and just the schemes have just evolved from the early in the season.
How does this team compare to Gus Malzahn's first chance to win a national championship in 2013?
Well, it's certainly more balanced than that team on offense. That team was just a power running team. That team with Nick Marshall and Trey Mason and Greg Robinson at tackle could just dominate opposing defenses and sort of impose their will on them. I'm not sure that's the type of offense Auburn has now. It has an explosive offense, certainly. It's put up some good points. I think the biggest difference between 2013 and 2017 is on the other side of the ball. Defensively, Auburn can win games with its defense. And they're playing at a championship level. Do what they did against Georgia to hold that rushing offense to under 50 yards was pretty impressive. And they're going to have another big test actually this week. ULM's got a really good offense, and then of course Alabama. We all know what they can do. So I think the biggest difference is an improved defense there, and we'll see how the offense continues to hold up against good opponents. That 2013 offense had success against everybody, and this offense, for the first time, really against Georgia, a top 10 type defense, finally started putting up some good numbers. So if they can do that against Alabama in 10 more days, that tells me this offense is legit.
And of course, I can't leave this interview with you without asking you about the difference maker at kicker and Daniel Carlson. how have you seen a better kicker at Auburn since you've been there? And what kind? I mean, to me, this is the type of kid that a big situation in these potentially huge games coming up. If they need a field goal, he's going to deliver.
He is the best kicker I've ever seen at Auburn. He's now the career and SEC leader in scoring. Career SEC leader in field goals made. He's just terrific. That 54-yarder he made against Georgia, which is only the third longest in his career, but I watched it back on the playback, and it could have gone for 60 easy. He just crushed that ball. So he's been a little inconsistent, had some protection problems, had a couple of blocks earlier on, but when he gets everything right, he can be a difference maker, a real weapon.
Well, right now he's our lad's number one rated place kicker, senior place kicker for the 2018 NFL Draft, and if he keeps making some big kicks the rest of the way, you never know. He might actually get drafted and hear his name called for the 2018 NFL Draft. And you never know about these kids, but it's I got to believe with these place kickers, especially the ones that get drafted, especially the higher they get drafted, that boy, you really got to be mentally tough in order to handle that type of pressure, because it just seems to be a pressure situation with these kids when they get drafted as kickers. And Daniel Carson has what it takes that if he gets drafted, he'll be able to handle it.
I think so. I really do. He's got a great mentality, great attitude, a hard worker. Just seems to have it going on and off the field, classroom, a star there too. So yeah, I think he's the type of young man that can handle that move.
Brian, what's your gut tell you about the game next week?
Oh, my gut tells me that this Auburn team is on a roll now, and they're gonna beat Alabama. That's just what my gut tells me. I mean, anything can happen in that series. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere at Jordan-Hare. And but just watching Alabama against Mississippi State, they look like a team that sort of, maybe needs a little kick in the butt. That sometimes a loss will bring a good team, and I think Auburn's ready to deliver that.
All right, Brian. Well, I appreciate it. And you never know. Maybe if they do beat Alabama and Alabama can slip into the playoffs, I mean, I couldn't imagine what the scene would be like if it was an Alabama-Auburn national championship game.
That would be unbelievable. I can't, and it'd be in Atlanta, I believe. So that
wow,
be crawling with crazy people.
See, then now that you've just said that, now I believe in these sort of stars aligning kind of moments. So that could be something. Brian, best of luck next week against Alabama, and hopefully we'll talk to you again sometime really soon down the road.
Hey, sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Anytime.
All right, thank you. All right, that's again Brian Matthews, sports writer covering Auburn football for Rivals and Yahoo. And I look, what I've said about this team most of the year, based on the Clemson loss, based on the LSU loss. There was no way I could see that this team was going to, even though I said after the LSU game that there was no way that even though they had a shot. And that's the first thing that I want to remind all the Auburn fans and all the college football fans right after that loss on October 16th, on that Monday, was they are not out of it. But I just can't see them winning right now with the way Jarrett Stidham's playing. I said that. And then all of a sudden, okay, you start seeing the 94 points combined, Arkansas, Texas A&M, and I'm thinking, yeah, but they had 93 points combined coming into the LSU game, or actually they had 144 points combined coming into the LSU game in the previous three, those SEC games. So it doesn't matter. That's just the opponent. Once he goes up against this Georgia defense, I can't imagine. And you know what? Okay, maybe if they do beat them, we did throw that possibility out there. It was almost a pick 'em. But I mean, come on. And then they got to beat Alabama's defense and then Georgia again. And no, I mean, just no way. But then all of a sudden, the game happens. And I say this a lot because I think this is important for people who analyze games. And maybe because I've been doing this long enough. I've learned a lot of lessons, and you have to if you're a good analyst. You have to learn not to hold anything personal. You have to quickly admit either if you were wrong in your analysis or if your analysis needs to be corrected and updated fast. And if you can do that, the people who do that are the people that really have the better careers, the people who can be trusted for their analysis to their listening audience. And what I see right now And yes, it might have been one game based on the Georgia game, but it's also a combination of things. But it is, talking to someone like Brian as a reaffirmer to reaffirm what we saw just before the Georgia game, because we have to now go back to that and say, okay, well, maybe it wasn't the opposition they were playing. Maybe there was something that was changing, and so we throw in the Georgia game, and I have now a really firm belief, just like Brian, that with Alabama, with the injuries that they're dealing with one of their top defenders out for the season, we saw how it hurt them last week in the running game. That this is, again, the seniors needing to beat Alabama for the first time. All this at home, all the stars are aligning for an Auburn win. And if they win that game, they get to the SEC championship game. Now remember, they got to win that game. See, Alabama, if they lose to Auburn, can still easily walk into the playoffs if Georgia wins. Now, of course, they'll need a little bit of help, and probably will need Wisconsin to lose to Ohio State or at least one time, because I still don't think that they're going to knock Wisconsin out if they're undefeated, and even if it's Alabama. So I don't think that's going to happen. But if Alabama, if this Auburn team can find a way to beat Alabama, and then they go in and they got to take on a Georgia team again, the thing with that game that leads me to believe that they have a shot is because of the fact that we don't know how Georgia's going to respond. Psychologically, we don't know. And Kirby Smart's only a second-year head coach. And I said this for the last couple of months. I don't know, because of Kirby Smart, a defensive guy, he probably will stick with Fromm, whether he should or not. And I have no idea if he should or not. I really don't. I'm not saying you should bench him now. I'm just saying at some point, if Fromm is in another big game in a big moment, let's say the SEC championship game, doesn't produce well early, will he make a switch quick enough to save the season? I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that they're dealing with a freshman right now at quarterback. They're dealing with an inexperienced head coach in his second year, and a team that might be psychologically damaged from this game against Auburn. Now, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. Maybe they get their confidence back again, and they roll into the SEC championship game a better team. Because if Auburn loses that SEC championship game, they're out. Alabama can then slip in to that playoff berth, even if they lose. So, and as I was saying before, so let's say Wisconsin loses, as Brian said, one of the ACC teams loses, so that just opens the door. Alabama can find their way into the playoffs. Auburn loses to Georgia, and you have Georgia, Alabama, and say Oklahoma and ACC champ. But I'm starting to really believe that Auburn would be the play here. I really do. And definitely when I see that Alabama is basically an even pick to win the championship. Auburn's about 9-10-1. And they should be. They should be. But the way they're playing, Stidham, and remember I also referenced the Jake Coker situation a couple years ago when they won the national championship. Remember we talked about that. That when they won the championship that year, Jake Coker, there was no way you could look at that Alabama team with Coker at quarterback and go, oh, yeah, that team's going to win the national championship. There's just no way you would have thought that. Absolutely no way. And yet they found a way. And they found a way because Coker actually played his best football during the playoffs. And when he played his best football during the playoffs, they win the national championship. And you look and you go, wow, I mean, he just played incredible. I'm really shocked that he played that well. But you know what? He was a veteran quarterback. He had been around for a while, and he just got on a roll. And if that, and maybe there were some little differences as well that they tweaked back then with the passing game to get Coker going, similar to what's going on with Stidham here. So I'm saying, hey, why not, right? If Alabama can do it a couple of years ago, so can Auburn this year. And they have to have that model though. Protect Stidham, run the football. Okay, make sure that you run the football enough that you do not put enough pressure on Stidham to win the game, and definitely play great defense. You play defense like you played against Georgia in that game, you are going to be there at the end of games, and then you turn it over to Daniel Carlson, and hopefully he can kick you into a national championship win. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good right now if I'm an Auburn fan, and I think there's a lot of Auburn fans that are feeling pretty good about themselves, considering where they just were a few weeks ago. All right, that'll do it for our show. We're going to see you again tomorrow with our OFN College Football Preview Show. Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com, will join us to talk about the USC-UCLA game, Sam Darnold, and more. We'll also talk with Dave Matter regarding the Missouri football team on the OFN Meeting Room tomorrow. Don't forget to check out Ourlets.com for the latest draft preview brochure that's available right now. Also, the best college football depth charts in the industry. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. We'll see you next time on the Ourlets Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the NFL Draft.